Today we have a principle that will transform the way you treat those you love most. You'll also hear the story of the oldest church on Oahu. And finally, you'll see the beginnings of a movement that changed Hawaii and its young people forever.
Today's episode features Pastor Curt Kekuna here on the Kingdom Collective podcast.
Well, welcome everybody. This is our Kingdom Collective podcast, and you are in for a treat today. So I'm actually going to pass it over here to Pat to introduce our guest today because he knows him a little better, and he's going to give us a full picture on this. But oh man, this is an honor. I've been looking forward to this one. So.
Yeah, what was it? About 6-7 years ago, I saw this very tall Hawaiian-looking guy come in to our church. We were meeting at Kaiser High School at the time. And all throughout the entire service, he looked very serious at me. Very serious. And I was like, okay. You know, as a speaker, you can kind of notice faces and things. And then he came back the next week, and I was like, there's that dude again. And then finally, some of the guys on our team were like, dude, do you know who that is? And I was like, no, I don't know. I just know that he's staring into my soul. Like, that's what I know. He's just...
I get that a lot, by the way.
And he was like, that's Pastor Curt Kekuna. Just echoed into my heart. And I said, whoa. And then he just kind of unpacked like just a little bit of your story, Pastor Curt. And it's been so good to really build a relationship with you over the last few years. And really that's been your heart as you've been a part of our church at New Hope Hawaii Kai. But really, you're not just part of our church. I really see you as you are a part of the church in Hawaii because you have so much relationship. You've pastored at Kauai Hau Church and you've done ministry in so many different contexts. And so many people just relationally on our island that this is a real joy to be able to share some conversation, some time with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I figured maybe what we could just do is just to kind of start, because most people on our islands are familiar with your ministry, Kauai Hau, different things and that, but just maybe for those that aren't, you kind of just pull back a little bit and like, when did you start? How did that even happen? How long did you pastor there?
Oh,
kind of like just like a high
Kauai
level.
Hau itself?
Yeah.
Okay, we can start there.
Or you want to start? We can start wherever you want to
Start from the beginning. Why don't we start with Kauai Hau?
Wait,
that's not the beginning.
Beginning of Kauai Hau. Wait, I'm getting mixed messages here. I think it's important though to know how I got to Kauai Hau. We were my family, my dad, mom. We were little kids, and we lived over here. But my dad was working for Hawaiian Airlines. Now he left it. He was in high school at Farrington High School. But he had to leave because his father, a fireman, was hurt, broke his back actually at a fire. So he was the oldest male, so he had to leave. And he my dad had to actually leave school. And he was a freshman, and so he had to work. So now that kind of work ethic stuck with me. But he started in 1940, and he was at the airport. And what he did is incredible. But in 41, something happened at the airport. They were bombed. So here's a 16-year-old kid walking around with a 45 strapped to his hip. Whoa. Because they were deemed essential workers.
Yeah.
So he had to stay at the airport and work at the airport. Well, that fostered in him a whole bunch of ideas and training of how and what to do as an adult at 16.
Wow.
So by the time he was, and this is where I come in, by the time he had us, I was born in 1948. Don't do the math. It's 75 years old, all right? So by that time, he'd risen from baggage boy to pretty high. So in 1950, Mac, that was the name of the guy who was his boss, said, hey, will you go to Big Island, Waimea, Kamoela, and open up the airport for us there? So that's what my dad did.
Way.
Wow.
And that is, beyond. When you think about that, wait a minute, baggage boy to opening up an airport. So he did that, was good at that. And so he left, not left, but they asked him, okay, you did that well. Now go to Maui, which is where I grew up. And that's where this Kauai Hau was going to intersect with us. So we went to Maui, and we lived in 3 different places. But basically, what influenced me there is Kahu, Dr. Reverend Abraham Akaka was our pastor at Kahului Union Church.
Wow, okay.
That's when I first got to understand a little bit more about this whole Christian thing, because I didn't know. Come on, I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that's when I began to understand. I love that man. There's no way not to love that man if you ever meet him.
Yeah.
He was incredible. He's charismatic, warm, open, loving, just everything that you would think that you would want from an adult. So got to know him then. And it was in 1954, 55. He tapped me and said, I want you to light the candles for a Christmas service. Whoa.
Wow.
That's huge. So he asked me to get another guy. So I went to the neighborhood and got my best friend, Melvin Young, and we were acolytes for that that Christmas service. Now, that affected me big. It wasn't just lighting the candles. It was beyond me. Even as a little kid, I understood that God was beyond us. I couldn't define it any better than that. He is beyond me. He's beyond my dad. He's beyond any adult I know. But God is real. And that's where it started. Because as you know, Reverend Akaka became the kahu at Kauai Hao. That's why it intersects.
No
wow.
way. I
Yeah,
didn't
he went
realize
from
that.
Kahului Union to he was at Kahului Union, I think, a year or two, not longer than that. Then he went to Haile Church, and I think he was there for about a year or two. And then he went directly to Kauai Hao. Now, we were still living on Maui.
Yeah.
So when my dad decided to leave Hawaiian Airlines and start his own business, we moved in 1960 back here on Oahu. And we had a home up in Manoa. So we went to live there. My dad did his business, and I went to Kauai Hao Church. So that's the connection.
Wow.
So real fast too, because some people listening, I'm sure, like they've heard Kauai Hao Church and they don't really know when did that church start. Because I know, like, I mean, I've been in Hawaii now for 20 years now. So I make 20 years. Some of you guys
You're
like.
only 24.
I think I like this guy.
He's a great guy.
Some of you guys like that's about 19 too many.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's time to go. But this church is such a staple, you know, in the Saints. Like, just can you just, because you've mentioned it a few times when we asked you about it, but can you just pull back and just, when did that church even start?
Okay.
Like, you know what?
Well, it started because of this guy named Opuka Haia back in the 1800s, early 1800s. His family was all killed because that's what you do when you're a minor player, a minor king. He was with a minor king, and so his whole family was massacred by Kamehameha's army. So he was given to a priest, and what he was going to do is to become a kahuna. So he became a cabin boy, left Captain Cook in Kealakekua Bay, and went around traveling throughout the Pacific, but landed, and the captain offered him to take him back to Hawaii. And he said, no, he didn't have anybody. He didn't have family then.
Yeah.
They're all dead.
Wow.
So he landed in Boston. And then what the captain did, obviously, is they took him under his wing and watched him for a while. And then he ended up in Connecticut. And that's where things really start to happen, because he was converted to Christianity. And then his one burning desire was to have his people know who Christ was. So that's what he spent the next 10 years doing. And when the American Board for Foreign Missions, Commission for Foreign Missions, got started, he just lobbied them and he just pled with them, please come back or go back to my homeland, because all the missions they were being done in Africa. Everybody was going to Africa, and there's a gentleman named Samuel Mills. Well, actually, Samuel Mills Jr. He and Opukahia were best friends. But Sam said, hey, listen, I'm calling him Sam like I know him. Samuel.
We go way back.
We go way back. But Samuel said, hey, I'm going to be going to Africa. When I come back, then I'll go back with you to Hawaii. And so, Opukahia said, yeah, sure, good. But he never made it back. He died. And I think it's Sierra Leone back in the day. And he never made it back. But it still burned for Opukahia to have the gospel brought to his people here. He didn't know what was going on over here, but there are already some incursions made by Tahitians, who were already here in the islands visiting, and that's where our queen, Keopulani, was converted was through the Tahitian ministry.
Wow.
But coinciding with that is when the missionaries came in 1820, they landed in actually in Kauai, but they went down to Kona, met with the royalty there, and they were there for about 2 weeks, and then immediately following that, and they started the first church, Moku Aikawa, in Kona. And then they came over here 2 weeks later, and that was the establishment of Kauai Ha'o Church. So that's how Kauai Ha'o got started, and that's in 1820, April. That's why we celebrated 200 years.
Wow.
3 years ago. And Kauai Ha'o, we had a big celebration. The president, Kahu there, Kahu Makuakane, is the senior pastor there. And we did some projects there to highlight the fact that it's been 200 years of ministry here in Hawaii. And what made it distinctive about Kauai Ha'o was because the kings and the queens, when converted, made Kauai Ha'o their church. So if you ever go there, if your listeners are going to go there, they're going to see 2 pews in the back. And those are royal pews. 2 different families. The Kamehameha family, if you walk in on your left, and you'll see the crowns that are there, that's the Kamehameha family.
Wow.
And the one on the right is the Kalakaua family pews. But those weren't there originally. They were up in front because you cannot have commoners facing your back to Ali'i, right?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of sort of the history of there's so much more.
Yeah.
But that's how Kauai Ha'o got started back in 1820.
That's what I love. So it's like, okay, 200 years of just faithfulness and ministry and things. And just the story is super rich, even the beginning of, what Jesus started doing in our islands, being able to be here and what everything. And so I think why I'm really excited to hear your story today, one, just because what you've done for, different people that I've known and heard your name in different places, it's awesome. But 2 is you picked up a baton of ministry, because 200 years ago it started and keep passing. And then you ran really long and faithfully. And then you've passed it to another. And the heart of really what we're trying to do here is actually the same as to understand the big picture of what Jesus has been up to in Hawaii and how this works. And then how can we pick up that baton, run in such a way that we can pass it into faithfulness the way that, so many have. And so it started for you in Maui. So you got to know these guys in Maui. And then how did you end up in Oahu then?
Well, my parents moved back here because my dad left Hawaiian Airlines. So we started going. Then I went to this school. It's this nondescript school on the hill called Kamehameha. So that's where I went for 6 years. And I was influenced up there by Reverend John Mulholland. And I don't know where he was from. He's from the mainland somewhere. But he was about 4'8", just a sweet guy.
So about my height.
I knew it was going there. This guy. I mean,
I like this
Pat's
guy.
like,
I like his
I need to
style.
befriend that guy.
He was 4'8". He couldn't verbalize very good or very well, but what he did have and what came across clear was a loving heart. Nobody questioned that whatsoever, and that attracted us to him. But he asked me, and I don't know why he did, because I certainly wasn't past the material in high school for sure. But he asked me, will you be on the deputation team, which means you go to a different island and you preach, and you go on Easter break and you preach at all these churches, the UCC churches at one time, since they were started way back when, they were the largest denomination here. Because the king and queen forbade any other religion to come in for 10 years. So they established themselves really well here. So when at Kamehameha Schools, being part of the congregational system, I was assigned the Big Island. That was my assignment. So we went the whole Easter break. We went to churches every day, twice a day, and we were all taught how to preach a sermon and read the scriptures and play music, the whole 9 years for the congregations up there.
Wow.
That also affected me, not only Akaka, but also doing that. And I looked at that, and it was rewarding, but it also planted a seed of fear. And it's a good fear.
Yeah.
And that is, I am actually doing something that is eternal, that belongs to God. Don't mess it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fear part. As unfaithful as I was at that time, I still had this fear. Don't mess it up. And I still hear from people back from 1966.
Wow.
When I was doing that a couple years ago. It's almost a long time. So I hear from that, and that instilled in me a different direction.
So for you, these small invitations, these kind of and invites into doing these things, it was lighting candles, and that ignited something, an interest and an awareness that God's presence is something more than just a religious practice, to even an invitation to go to these islands. For you, Kahu Kurt, did you really sense like ministry, or like, I want to dedicate my life's purpose to preaching the gospel and to making sure people know the love of Jesus, and even doing that specifically here on island? I know you've spent time in the mainland and ministry in different places, but even in Hawaii, just saying, this is my mission field here. And when did that kind of become real for you?
In order for it to become real, I have to go back a few years. What happened was, when I graduated, I was in pre-law, and I was headed to law school. But back in the day, what affected us tremendously was the draft. Do you guys even know what that is? Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah, I had a draft number.
That's where they pick the guys for football, right?
That's right.
This is a different kind of football. This is real. You only get one down. So back in the day, we had a deferment system in the draft. 2S was a deferment for school. So if you went to school, you were deferred until you graduated. 1A was prime, you definitely went. 4F is you were disqualified, that kind of stuff. So I was 2S all the way through college, from 66 through 70. On my birthday as a senior, I get this draft notice that when we graduate in May, we graduated on Sunday. On Monday, there's several of us, there's a couple hundred of us that we had to report to the Spokane County Courthouse to be inducted.
Whoa.
So we kind of knew at February, my birthday, I knew I was going.
Yeah.
And at that time, my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, who is my wife now, we were seriously talking about, should we continue, should we not continue? Well, when we got the draft notice on my birthday, that sealed that. And I said, we ain't continuing, because I ain't going to go. There's no way I'm going to go and then not come back to you. I want to make sure if I go, I come back. So anyway, I went to the induction hall. It's very fun. You get together a couple hundred people, and it looks like a nudist colony over there, just men. And you learn how to cough really well. And then you go to the physical and all that kind of stuff. Well, at the end of that, it was about 4 hours, and there's still more to be done. They called a couple of hundred of us out of there and said, okay, you guys can go home. You guys are all 4F. You're disqualified. I had some injuries from previous years in my life, including a crooked back, a compromised back. And as a result, I've had 2 back surgeries. But they disqualified me because of that. Now, why am I saying that? Because I don't think God caused that, but he used that to move my life in a different direction. Otherwise, I would have been in Vietnam.
Wow.
Easily. Because all my friends went, all my classmates went.
Yeah.
Everybody went. But I didn't go. So now here I am. I had to call my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and said, Becky, honey, I'm sorry. I'm 4F. They won't take me. And she was screaming, all right. I said, no, honey, I don't think you understand. I'm not going. All right. Honey, that means our plans are null and void. So we had to rethink a new direction. But not only that, I knew in February I was going. So I didn't plan. I wasn't thinking ahead. I didn't plan for the future. So here I am now in May with no place to go for the summer or for the next fall. None. Enter a good friend of mine, because I had been working with Young Life, doing some things, starting a club and all those kind of things, which are important.
Yeah.
Then he said, hey, listen, we'd like you to go to Fuller Seminary, and we're paying. Those are great words to hear.
Yeah.
And we're paying. But it was for a degree, there's a master's degree in youth ministry. Fuller had just partnered with Young Life to create, with Young Life and Youth for Christ, and I think InterVarsity, and they had created a program. The only difference was we didn't take languages. So it was very time intensive at the time, so we didn't do that. But we went through every other course that was there to take, and we graduated with a master's.
Wow.
So we did that, and that's how I got not sentenced. That's a wrong word. That's how I got the idea I was going to do something different with my life. I was sentenced. But in the meantime, what happened is there are three guys. The three of us got together in 1970 when we all knew we wanted to do Young Life in Hawaii.
Yeah.
His name was Grant Lee. He just passed away a couple of years ago. He was my mentor. He was 3 years ahead of me. And he was at Fuller already. And then Warren Nakano, he went up to Pittsburgh, Antioch, California area to learn about Young Life. And we said, let's keep on praying about that and see what happens. Well, as it turned out, both Grant and Warren found different careers. And I said at the end of 73, no, this is what I want to do. And so it became solid in my heart and my mind. And God said, this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And the gist of that is God was in charge the whole time.
Yeah.
I was not.
Yeah.
So I, in 1973, all they said at the end of our course is, okay, here's where you all are going to go. And they said, and Kurt, you're going to go to Australia. And I said, what? Well, where am I going? So I had a little sit down with some folks because I said, I've always wanted to go home.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to be. So we had to sit down and rerouted and came to Hawaii.
Wow.
Not knowing what that entailed.
Yeah.
At all.
Okay, so hold on
just
one
said,
second.
okay,
I got to pause on this. This is huge. So for those guys that are listening that don't know, Young Life is probably one of the foremost effective ministries when it comes to young people. They reach a ton of people through high schools, junior highs.
Their camps
they run
are
like the best camps,
epic.
just ridiculous. So, but as I'm hearing and understand is like at this point, there is no Young Life in Hawaii.
No, there isn't.
So you're like the guy that was part of the team that helped start Young Life.
Yeah. Not
In
the
Hawaii.
guy. There's a team of us.
Yeah, I said part of the team.
Let's be clear.
I said, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. I know not just you, but like one of the original guys that like, because it's, I all these years later, I've come across so many kids and leaders in Hawaii that have had their lives radically changed through Young Life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And so,
Well, yeah, it took, it's a team effort, by the way, and I'll tell you why. Dr. Yoder, Paul and Alice Yoder were here. They came for 1 year as professors at the University of Hawaii. And they started praying for Young Life ministry in 1966.
Wow.
Now you got to remember, I just graduated from high school and then I went to Whitworth. So when I went to Fuller, they tried to put me in touch with a ton of people who were already in Hawaii praying for a Young Life.
Yeah.
There was only one couple, the Yoders.
Wow.
They wanted Young Life here. And they kept on praying. They contacted me while I was at Fuller saying how excited they are for me to come home and start Young, because they had experienced Young Life.
Yeah.
Alice was a missionary in Africa. Her parents dedicated their whole lives. Paul was an incredible Christian gentleman, Dr. Paul Yoder at the University of Hawaii. So anyway, that's how I got situated here. The Yoders and the Kekunas, that was it. Nothing else.
and how old are you at this point? At 1973?
Let's see, I'm 24.
24. Okay.
25.
So you're back home 24.
Back home in 1973.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how long did you do Young Life then after that?
30 years.
That's unreal.
Yeah, I did 30 years total. I was in Young Life, on Young Life staff.
So your primary ministry expression has been through Young Life.
Absolutely.
And then you were also, how long were you pastoring at Kauai Hau Church?
13 years.
13 years. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And still actively involved with Young Life even today.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know how Young Life works. It works in the community. Okay. So when you have a home, that actually becomes your ministry center. All my kids know that, and they still do the same thing today. Their home is an open door. Anybody can come in anytime, any place, anywhere, eat whatever we got. It's yours, or that kind of thing. Well, that's what we did where we are currently located at 800 Keala Place. It's a duplex. It's a pretty sizable duplex. It's about 1,800 square feet on one side, and it's a little small on the other side because we had an addition. Okay, the reason why I say that is because when we were doing ministry there for 30 years, we had people in and out of our home every day. We had as many as 50 sleeping over in our house. It was only a 3-bedroom, 2-bath little deal. But then the garage and the yard, doesn't matter. But they were all over the place, okay? Yeah. And our neighborhood was by and large accepting, and mostly by and large, and in small parts, not so much. Payback. The current air director bought the duplex right next to ours. We share a common wall.
Share a wall.
Last night,
that's right.
Here we are, my wife and I, just minding our own business, and people are running through our yard.
That's right. Emily, just knock on the wall. Just knock on the wall. And
payback. Payback. So, in essence, that makes us happy because we're still involved with Young Life. We go to the camps with Young Life. We're involved my wife's involved with the committee. I'm involved in the regional level because I used to be the regional director for Hawaii and get this, Alaska. So I did both of them at the same time. Yeah. So we're a Young Life home. And we're still doing that in Hawaii Kai. She's the East Oahu Young Life director.
Okay, so perfect. So you did 30 years of this.
Yes.
And just so you have this unique vantage point to see what God was doing among young people for those 30 years. You know, not like the only thing, because Young Life wasn't the only thing, obviously, different things, but just getting to know. So if you could, because I never got to witness those years or see. So when you look over that, what did you see God doing through the 70s, 80s, and 90s in young people in Hawaii?
70s, 80s, and 90s.
Just 3 decades.
Just 3 decades. That's it, man. That's why you're here. You're like, I can't believe you got to see all of this, you know?
Yeah, neither do I. I don't know if I still see it. But basically, what we were taught when we first came aboard Young Life, and Young Life did its own training besides what you had to do at seminary. They had classes every year for you to attend. But when I first started back in the 60s with Young Life in 1967, okay, it was curious. Oh, well, we had to find out what was going on. What were teenagers thinking and so forth. And there were so many people that were experts at that time, and we had to rely on them. But what we found out is the teenage culture changed every 4 to 5 years. It was changing, so we had to be on top of it to understand what's changing. Not just the language, but the everything else, the thought patterns and so forth. Well, but by the time I hit Hawaii in 1973, just 7-8 years later, the time frame had been reduced to not 4 or 5 years, but to 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
That the teenage culture was changing. Now, okay, you fast forward another 10 to 15 years, and you're now literally talking months. So you actually had to walk with the kids. They're not kids, they're teenagers, one by one. You got to walk with them to find out what's going on. Yeah. Because they change so quickly. But that's the first thing I learned. You have to become a student of the students to understand what their needs are. Yeah. What makes them tick and what doesn't make them tick. Yeah. What makes them ticked off. Those kind of things. And that's what we all became a student of. But the most important thing that I learned, especially with Young Life, and by the way, it's not particular to Young Life. I know a lot of great ministries do the same, was we walked, we call it friendship evangelism back in the day, 50 years ago, and we walked with them. Yeah. We didn't tell them what they had to believe in order for us to be with them. But we walked with them. We went on campus with them. We had camping with kids that didn't know who Christ was, but after camp, they came to know Christ. Yeah. But the whole idea was to spend as much time one-on-one with those that we were trying to reach. Yeah. That was the whole focus and nothing else. That supersedes anything else. That is even teaching in the Bible. Yeah, that's important. I guarantee you it's important. That's what it is for me. But at the same time, I watched these kids become so invested in who Christ was, mainly because of the models that all of the leaders were to them in high school. And like you too, TJ, I can point to so many today in the last 40, 50 years who are still walking with Christ because of the walking we did way back when.
Yeah.
It's not the activities.
Yeah.
It's the one-on-one relationship.
Wow. Now, and I think that's really huge because if some of my early youth ministry experience, my brothers was in Young Life, also in the mainland, and where you can get caught up in the event of camp or the event of these different things. But that's a really important statement because you're talking that at the end of the day, it's the relationship that anchors people into to each other, but it anchors us to Jesus more than that event, more than that camp thing. And I think that's, you've brought that, you've been faithful in walking with people shoulder to shoulder, year after year, faithfully in the ordinary day-to-day, week-to-week rhythms of life. And that's huge. I think that's a huge, huge thing because we continue, as things change so fast, even more so now, and we're so digitally connected that it's always about the next event or the next influencing moment, and you just do not get a pass on being shoulder to shoulder or face to face with people.
Absolutely. And that's still going on today.
Yeah.
Apart from Young Life, apart from Kauai Hall Church, in the last 6 years, that's what I've been majoring in.
Wow. Day-to-day
Walking beside people. I'm still leading men to Christ now.
Yeah.
And I'm still discipling them today.
So I think what's interesting, because like you were saying, things changed every 2 to 3 years with the young people, but I think culture-wide today we're watching like a massive change and quickly. And so I think that a lot of people talk about doing life with people or being close, but at least from our vantage point, we don't see a lot of people actually doing that. And when I'm talking to you, I'm hearing like people very much, they're active connecting to people digitally by leaving comments on everything and that. And so I'm just curious, like if you were to talk to somebody and to just tell them, like they're saying, like, how do you do that? How do you do life with people in such a way that you're leading them to Jesus or changing their life? If someone was just starting and coming to you and just saying, like, how do I do that practically? What would you tell them?
Okay, this is exactly what I just said before. This is what I'm doing. I actually meet with people one-on-one, face-to-face. Now, I will confess, sometimes it's easy to do a Zoom. Okay, I will confess it. Our schedules are so maniacally crazy. But I will say this. I would say 60 to 70%, probably more than that, it's face-to-face. And I make sure I do that, whether they know Christ or not. Because if they get used to you before they meet Christ and they're hanging out with you, when they meet Christ, that is not a problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
And they look forward to it. So that will never change. I mean, that you take a look at the face-to-face that Christ did with the 12. Take a look at that. I mean, where was the pause there? Where was what was digital at the time? There wasn't any. All there was walking side by side through everything. Have you been watching The Chosen?
Yeah.
That is so real to me in watching how the Jesus figure just hangs with them, walks with them, answers their questions, or actually sometimes lets them struggle with things and so forth. And we do the same. We do the exact same thing. And people, they know. They know who you are. They know what you've done. They know what you're trying to do with them. Yeah. I've had several in the last couple of years say, "Oh, you want me to know Jesus, don't you?" Yes, I do, because that's the most important.
Yeah.
He's the most important thing in my life, and I know He can be that for you. And like I said, and right now I'm involved with several men who have just received Christ in the last year.
Wow.
See, that to me is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I did that with kids long ago.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing this with men.
Okay, so and I want to flip it now. So you got some of the guys that's like, okay, I'm good at doing the face-to-face and putting in time. I just don't know how to do the Jesus part. What would you say to somebody that asks that?
It's your life. Really, TJ, it's your life. There's no way. You and I both know this. What we do is the scriptures affect us. It changes. It transforms us. That's what God's word is supposed to do. Why? The Holy Spirit is embedded there.
Yeah.
And then he embeds himself into you and your heart. Your heart changes. Your heart is for me, it's the engine, right? That's what everything flows from. Yeah. Okay. The heart is deceitful amongst. Okay. I get that. Okay. I'm there. My heart ain't not and all that perfect either. But I got to tell you this, when the heart is transformed, it's very difficult to get it off that transformation. Because once you taste, oh my goodness, it's something you never forget. And the people that I've been walking with, they can deny it all they want. But what we do, by the way, even with those who don't know Christ, we still use this. And I let them know up front, we still use the scriptures because that's much more impactful and important and life-changing than my words.
Yeah.
So that's why I use the scriptures no matter what.
I like when you're talking about when you're living out your faith and just doing natural evangelism. That's just you being you, walking with Jesus.
Right.
That your precondition or for meeting with someone is not that they've already bought in. It's just that they've been put on your heart by Jesus to spend time with.
Absolutely. If you look at Chosen, those guys didn't know what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
They also didn't know when it hit them, what hit them.
Yeah.
But when they hung out with Christ more, they began to understand. And I don't try to expect too much from too many people, especially if they don't have a background.
Yeah.
Right? So we just walk alongside together. And the thing that's going to transform them is who Christ is in me. But by the way, just a anecdote, they also get to see me fail.
Yeah.
It's not victory after victory after victory. Sometimes I've been known to get a little bit out of hand, and people, and especially the guys that I walk with, they've been able to see that. I don't do it for their benefit, and that's for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, human beings are human beings.
Yeah.
But the forgiveness of God is greater than anything that we ever think and do in our lives. Way bigger.
One question on here is 30 years of ministry. Sometimes you can point to either people, relationships, or experiences with God that you've had along the way that really changed and transformed you, or they really stand out. In year 7, it was a relationship that really bolstered something in your faith, or that you saw shift something in your ministry. Do you have, in thinking back on your years in Young Life and in Oahu, is there one story? That's kind of an unfair question, but is there one story or experience that you can point to say that I saw Jesus transform me or that person, or something shifted in my ministry in Hawaii at that time when God was doing this?
Yeah, I saw it before Hawaii. Obviously, I was involved with the Young Life up in the mainland before I got over here. And that essentially attracted me to the gospel. It attracted me to Christ more than anything else. When you're leading a Young Life, I had the privilege of starting a Young Life Club at Joe Ferris High School in Spokane. And I can see clearly that very day, this guy named Alex, and I just couldn't understand it. I was telling him about Christ, and he said, okay, let's pray. Wait, I'm not done yet. Wait, you got it. Well, no, I get it. I get it. He's going to change my life, and that's what I want. Let's just go and pray and ask him my life now. That blew me away. Not only was that's what we're supposed to be doing with kids, and here I had this kid who's actually pleading with me, lead me to Christ. That changed me.
Yeah,
because that's the first time I understood it wasn't about what I could do. It's about what Jesus wants to do through me. So let Jesus keep on doing it. Get out of his way.
That's it, man.
Get out of his way.
That changed me. That transformed me from the very get-go.
Yeah.
And I'm really thankful I had that experience early on. And that's been my major focus. Get out of Jesus' way. Let him do the work.
So speaking of like, okay, so I'm gonna go back to the big picture of this. So you see him work in power. You're doing all these years and that. So do you feel like in Hawaii, like amongst young people in like the 80s and 90s, do you feel like people were like at large, were they getting closer to Jesus? Was walking further from Jesus? I know it's very case by case, but if you were just to look back and just be like, during these years, it felt like people were pulling closer. Or I'm just curious, what would you say to that?
I think the 70s you got to remember the 70s when I first cutting my teeth there. All right, now take a look at this. What was going on? The Vietnam War was going on. What really affected me in that time was the Kent State Massacre. That marked me for life, and I just knew that that's not the position I wanted to be in, but I wanted to be about giving life. But that marked me. Hate Ashbury was going on. Make love, not war. That kind of stuff. There are several key things that were going on culturally that was affecting what was going on in ministry. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to try and wade myself through all of the noise to come down to what is important and what's not important. And what helped me tremendously in that period of time, I had a professor at seminary. His name was Bob Munger. Ever hear that name? Mm-hmm. And he wrote this little booklet called My Heart Cries Home. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a classic. No, he's rewritten several. He's since passed, but he's rewritten several times. And I learned from him that we need to keep on giving our hearts over to God always, because we like it or not, admit it or not, and I admitted it. He says sometimes we reserve closets that we don't want to give to God. Mm-hmm. And it's only when we totally surrender will we understand the fullness of what he's trying to do in our lives. So I will admit, for a long, long time there, long time, my wife would tell you it's still going on, but for a long time, I had to keep on giving over to God all these little things in my life that were actually impeding me to do ministry. So I don't know if that answers your question, but what I am trying to say to you is, the process of hanging with people through the 70s, different. The 80s, I found the 80s to be quite more problematic because they were actually reacting to what was going on in the 70s. And matter of fact, all the protests and so forth. So you have these 80s people questioning, okay, now, how far can I take this? What else can I protest, kind of a thing? And then we saw so many things starting to crop up that the teenagers started to get involved with that was just crazy to me. And all we had to do, especially in the 80s and even in the 90s, all we had to do was focus only on one thing, that the God who loves never changes. Culture changes. But the God who loves and the impact of that love that he gave his life for us, that never changes. That's still very impactful even today. So that's what, if you can take a look, and please ask, Mark and Betsy were two of my best leaders, by the way, during the 70s and the 80s. Check with them, because that's all we had. We didn't become a student so much of students as we became a student of who Christ was and what he was doing in our lives. And that's all we were trying to project and give to others, and still do.
That's awesome. Okay, so you do 30 years now of young people, and then you
I'm getting old by that time.
Yeah. About to make a shift. And so then now we're going to come now full circle where we started, which is, stepping into the next season. How did that happen that you took the church? I know there was Maui ties there, but how did this actually come to fruition? Because this is a pretty significant shift, yeah?
It could be. It could be. But you see, for me, my mission in life, Matthew 22, love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. That doesn't change. That drove me back then and still drives me today. And then secondly, Matthew 20, make disciples. Those are the two linchpins in my heart and in my life. And that's how I conduct myself no matter what I do. So whether it's the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, being at Kauai Ha'o, starting there in 2004, that didn't change, and that will always be the same. So when you ask me what's important about those times, it's still being about the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. That's what I've been told. That's what I've been trying to do. And the main thing is love Jesus today. In the beginning of the day, I'm very maniacal about that. It's my wife gets crazy with me. She's from a farm. They do things when they want to, how they want to, whenever it's convenient. For me, if you're going to tell me 6:30, it's going to be 6:29. Say. So she's trying to work on me to be a human and not a robot. And she's working really good. She's working overtime in that. So what's happening with me is what I want to do is I want to be about Matthew 22 and 28, but do it in such a way that compassion comes across with it, because I've been with people who know the same verses but are militant about them, and it drives people away. It doesn't draw people to Christ. And I don't want to be that guy. So I major in trying to be the person who is going to have compassion and walk along all kinds of people. You know, I tried to do that my whole life, even especially when this whole thing blew up. When I went to Oahu, I went to testify at the legislature. I don't know if you guys, were you guys there? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You guys missed out, man. That's when they were doing civil unions. They didn't do same-sex marriage yet, because they said they just wanted, that group just wanted the civil union. So it's a very interesting time. But there were 4,500 people that went down there to testify. 4,000 spoke against it, and 500 voted for it. And when the hearing was done, Abercrombie said, it's law. You know, that kind of stuff. So when you go through times like that, you understand that you don't have any control. Only God has that control. You just do what you're called to do. And gentlemen, you already know this. Your first call, your first business of every day is to be on your knees. That's your first order. You miss that, you miss your whole day. You miss your calling. As pastors, you know that. That's where we have to be. Because we will get messages, we will get, not just sermons, we'll get messages from God at that time that alters us radically. You know, I've been doing, just like you, I've been doing, you know, I'll be preaching and I got this awesome sermon and I'll just be bringing it before God, and he said, no, it's good, it sounds good, it's really funny. Nope. Well, it's really convicting, I know. Nope. We have to be before God, because that's where we get our validation, if you will. And that's where we get those things that need to be said, regardless of who the audience is and how they're going to receive what we have to say or not say, because it's not dependent upon him. I truly do believe that when I preach to the audience of one. Truly. I don't try to get that mixed up, because the ego gets involved when I start to thinking, how can I please these folks? Dang it. They don't want to be pleased. They just want to be antagonistic. I'm sure you don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I didn't think so.
So, and I wanted to just camp for a minute on like Oahu and how everything, because you're ministering in a very like church that's steeped in tradition, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just
thanks for bringing it up, by the way.
It's a big shift. Like,
like I'm going to get in trouble right here. It's not going to happen.
No.
Oh gosh.
No. It's like going from parachurch to an actual local community church. You know, it's a different expression.
How did I get there? Well, Kahua talked to me about that several times. He knew what I was doing. And I had an interesting time with the UCC because I was at Fuller. And it was a very trying time, because people had a plan for my life, and it wasn't Young Life. And I just kept on emphasizing, I want to reach all the teenagers in Hawaii, not just a specific group, but all of them.
Yeah.
Everyone needs Christ. That put me in some list that I didn't care to be on, but it doesn't matter. But I stayed true to that. And that's why when I came here, there was not a whole lot of support for that.
Yeah.
but I was determined because that's the vision that God gave me. Go ahead and do that. So,
Okay, so when I'm listening to your story, there's a couple of things I've noted. So, like when you were young, someone asked you to do the candles, and that was big.
yeah.
And then
Reverend
someone
Akaka.
asked you to like go to Fuller, like we're going to pay for it, and that was
Yeah.
big.
Yeah,
and
that
so
was
there's
check.
this theme of everybody asking you, right, and inviting you in and giving you certain things. But now you're in a spot where you're talking, and you just said that, you know, a lot of people had a plan for my life, but God also gave me a vision for my life, and then there's a lot of us that kind of straddle the fence of like, okay, we want to honor everyone and also be faithful to what it is that the Lord's asking, and also walk into, you know, in a way that like honors tradition, but then feel that, and there's just this tension that like rages in a lot of people. Like, what was that like navigating that for you? Because you've walked in both worlds, you know?
Difficult. difficult. Mainly because, too, you know, I'm not immune to wanting to please people. I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's just who I am. I love people, and I want to do things that'll make them feel happy, feel good, so forth, especially when it has to do with the faith. You know, knowing Jesus, loving Jesus. I want to do that so badly. But in compromising early on, back in the 70s, in compromising several times, and we won't go into all of them. We won't even go into one of them. But in going through those times, I learned through many of my mistakes that was good. That wasn't good, and that wasn't healthy for my spiritual life, to compromise on what God had given me as my mission, as my ministry. Don't do that. I mean, I had so many people wanting to say, hey, listen, this is when I first brought Young Life over here. Hey, come do Young Life at our church, man. Just come into our church. You can be our youth pastor and so forth and so on. And I looked at that and I said, oh, thanks so much. But here's what I need to do. I need to be out in the community. Because when you back, okay, this is back in the 70s, okay? So don't put me in the 80s. But in the 70s, the people's ideas of having ministry, come to the church, build our youth ministry, make our church look really good, and then we'll see what happens then. And I was saying, I'll be glad to train your, and that's what I did, by the way. I asked them, send me your youth workers. And they can learn what Young Life does and how it does it, and then go back in the church and do that. Well, that's theoretical. Because when some of them, like Mark and Betsy, when they found out, well, Betsy already knew because I met her in Spokane at Young Life. Mark didn't know Young Life, but he began to know Young Life. When they started doing Young Life, they saw the excitement, they saw the effect, they saw everything that went on, and they wanted to be a part of it. And unfortunately, several of them did that, and then I didn't get any more calls because
I didn't want 50 people sleeping on their floor.
What the heck is going on with this guy? And, you know, I don't fault anybody for that. All I'm saying is, when you take a look at what ministry is, it's not just a thing that you do, it's a thing that you are.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you just shared a pretty important ministry paradigm or perspective, like the difference between seeing the opportunity to be on mission in a lot of different contexts versus come build our program and then we see where that goes. Have you seen that shift in Hawaii in the last?
I would say yes. Okay. I'd be real adamant in saying yes. I've been witnessing and watching what's going on a little bit in the youth ministry because I'm still interested in youth ministry, and I would say, by and large, I am very encouraged at the direction that I see that most churches are going. I'm very encouraged. It seems as though the word has gotten out. I think it's by God that relationships are key.
Yeah.
Relationships matter. And I'm seeing this much more wholesale than I did back in the 70s. You got to remember, we're reacting in the 70s. We're still reacting to what was going on in the 50s and the 60s. So you didn't quite have the idea of what it meant to be in a relationship. But when you start to understand that, and you walk side by side with people and you go through the good and the bad, you begin to understand how needy kids are and how needy you are. And the only solution to that need is Christ. So you put him at the center. And when you do that, things happen. Good things happen. Even if you don't see it, it does. Because I see stuff after that now. I mean, people will come and talk to me now who, 40 years ago, I would say, man, that guy is just so far out. It'll never happen. Wow, it's just, and now they'll tell me, thank you for what you did. I said, dude, we didn't talk. What the heck are you talking about? Never did anything. He said, no. And he'll tell you, and this is what I've been running up against in the last couple of years. Here's what you did, and here's how you did it. I used to train people, not on your level, but I used to train people to work on and so forth and so on. And those folks who are, you never know that, but those who are just hanging around are not just looking at what you're doing, they're hearing at what you're saying. And several of those guys have come and expressed that to me. They're in their 50s now, 40s and 50s. And it's very gratifying to know that I had quit swearing by that time, and everybody was receiving what I was saying.
That's awesome.
But we don't know who we're infecting. Yeah. We don't. We need to be those kinds of people who do what I say in the morning. So that's what drives us to do what we do during the day. And when it's all said and done, we have been faithful to what God has called us to do. And that's a natural consequence. People will be drawn to who you are.
But how do you do that, Kurt? Like you're 75. We did the math early on.
Yes.
You said it. I didn't say it. You said it. So you're 75. You've done this for so many years. In the natural trajectory is get a little bit. You've paid your dues in ministry, or you're looking to just kind of coast. I want to find a place where I'm more comfortable, where people are maybe catering to what I like, maybe a generation ago or 2 generations ago in terms of a ministry expression. But here you are at 75 saying, my heart is still burning for young people.
Absolutely.
Like my heart is still burning for Jesus and is still burning for the mission of Christ in young people. How do people do that, man? Like how do they catch that fire like you have?
Okay.
And keep it.
This is where you should never have invited me to come and speak, because I'm going to say this as carefully as I can. I don't plan that. I don't make that a goal. What I do is I have, and it's not anything special than anybody else, especially the kinds of folks that are my models. What I do is I try to be as faithful as I can in meeting with Christ every morning, praying, reading the scriptures. If you want to call it journaling, I call it scratching. You can do whatever you want to do. But it's in those kinds of things that your heart is being transformed. That's what keeps me going. It's nothing artificial outside of me that I'm conjuring up, or it's a formula where I can go back to and do A, B, C, and I'm good. No, it's you ever heard of Howard Hendricks? Yeah, from
guy.
Dallas. Yeah, okay. He was one of my professors too. Yes, he dumbed down and came to Fuller to teach us, okay? At least that's what people told me. Sweet man. Oh, gosh. What a sweet man. He didn't get in, and he said that he didn't get involved with any of the controversies, but he, as much as anyone in my life, influenced me as to the importance of that beginning of the day and hanging out with Christ and how that would affect every part of my life, not just ministry, but every part of my life, so that it affects how I treat my wife, my kids, those in my neighborhood, as well as what we do in ministry. But it's all of life. So it's not something I can point to and say, this is what happened and this is how you do it. But I can say, if you are faithful to God daily, He's faithful to you.
Okay, so here's the part, like I'm picking up what Pat's picking up and talking about, like you have this passion for young people. There's that passion for, the importance of the morning with Jesus and how it changes the whole day. So what I'm trying to wrap my head around now is that's consistent over your life for like 50 years. So I'm just, these 13 years when you're pastoring at Kauai, I'm trying to imagine like, what was ministering like there for you? Because I'm like, I wish I could see it in person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't, though. Oh. Okay.
Those are the years I can't see. You know what I mean? I'm like, how did this work?
Okay. So this is going to go out on a podcast, and I'm going to get some email on this sucker.
Tell you, we'll let you listen first so you can cut anything out.
yeah.
I'm like really curious. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Because my wife and I talk about this all the time. Mm-hmm. What we had determined, because we didn't know what to expect when we went to Oahu.
Yeah.
Our whole lives have been centered around how do we do youth ministry for all those years. So, and I will tell you that my wife and I became, we think, very good at that. Nobody else has told us that. We just think we did. Okay. We think we became very good at that. Now thinking about, there's a lot of prayer that went behind this, and now we're doing the real people, the adults. So what are you going to do? How are you going to change yourself and so forth and so on? And this is no kidding. After the first couple of years, we understood this one truth. Adults are just bigger kids.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change. You just love them where they are, walk alongside of them, provide some kind of things that they're not used to, because it's a new paradigm. I brought Rooted. Are you familiar with Rooted? Okay. I brought Rooted. My daughter is doing Rooted at a church called Mariners. She was on staff at, Mariners?
Mm-hmm. In California? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eric Geiger.
Yeah.
Geiger.
But yeah. We've been, because my daughter lives there and she was on staff at Mariners, single women's ministry. Her husband now is a single men's pastor. They disqualified themselves by getting married.
See.
So they're no longer on staff anymore, but they have my little grandson who's 9 months old. Okay. So all I'm saying is that whole business of working at the church itself, it didn't change. You walk alongside adults the same way you do with what I learned in young life. It's just amazing how much they open up, how much they want to be with you. Mm. And because what I found out is, in large measure, and I worked throughout the conference with so many different other churches, not just at UCC churches, but I had the privilege of working with other churches too. It's just amazing of how people turn a switch. When you're working with adults, then you work with adults and it's different, and it's not. Mm. It's not. It's a mistake to think so also, because they're just people who are looking to be loved, to be appreciated, to be thanked, to be recognized. It's the silliest things, but that's all they want. Mm. And when you do that, the gospel becomes alive for them. Alive. I took folks from Oahu to these training on the mainland. They'd never done that before. I mean, what does the mainland have to offer? We're Hawaiians. We don't. Yeah, right. I mean, what they learned and what they brought back, incredible. And that's all we did at Oahu. And who was better at that than I was? Because I was too immersed in details. It's my wife. Mm. She was incredible. She took over the women's ministry and made it a real live ministry that ministered to the community and did Bible studies and did trips and the whole 9 years. My wife was just incredible. She's my number one evangelist. That little lady. You got to meet her someday.
I got to meet her.
Yeah.
You got to.
Becky's awesome.
That's Aulani's mother, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
When she comes on the podcast in the future, then we can.
No doubt. The kind of inroads that she's making now.
Yeah.
Wow. I never was even half that good as she is right now. Yeah. She is a very accomplished person.
I just want to kind of start to just wrap with a few questions on
Sure.
that. So one thing I think that's pretty interesting. So you grew up Maui, Hawaii.
Yes.
And then you went to the mainland. You partnered with a Young Life, which is in the mainland. You put in Hawaii in that. So you have this like grasp of kind of both worlds, Mm-hmm. Hawaii is a very unique place with a very unique people in like the best way possible in that. And I'm curious for you, as you're looking today, what do you see that's like going on? What do you see God doing in Hawaii right now? Just given our context, our people, everything you see from your vantage point, what do you see he's up to right now here?
the same thing he's been up to for the last 4,000 years. It hasn't changed. He wants his people to know who he is, and how we do it is important. And as far as Hawaii is concerned, yeah, I believe she's unique. I mean, I go to visit, up in the mainland, and I can't wait to get home. I just can't. I don't know what it is. Is it the smiles? I don't think so. They got smiles up there. It's the food. Definitely, it's the food. But it's going to come down to the same thing. And this is why I think we have such a wise God. What is the greatest commandment? Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. You do that. I don't care what culture you're in. Take a look at all the missionary work that happened. Love God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And that's what they did wherever they went. I don't care who they were. And that's what transformed those cultures, whether it's in Africa, South America, or Europe, or China. It doesn't matter. That's who he is. And when you do that and you major in that, things happen beyond what we can even hope and dream about. So for me, this whole idea of Hawaii and how special it is, yes, it is, because I am Hawaiian. I think you know that. It is special. There's a special culture here. But I'm going to say this and get hate mail after I say it. God loves all cultures. It doesn't matter. He is so incredible in being inclusive. He wants us to be immersed in his love. So that's what we do. And if we are about that, we wouldn't be talking about different cultures. We won't. We'll be talking about who we are as people who love God and how he's created us and how great he is. That's my focus. That's what I want to focus on more than anything else. Now, please don't take that to mean I don't think Hawaii is special. It is. It definitely is special. And that's why I'm still here. We've got 4 kids. You know that. We have a nice son. And we have 3 daughters. Only 1 daughter's here. Why? Because the other 3 don't like us? No. It's because this is where we have decided we wanted to spend all of our days with the people over here. And whatever time we have left, and trust, my wife is still involved in ministry with her women, and I'm still involved with the folks that I'm involved with. And once in a while, Pat lets me preach at the church, I think once every 6 years. So I'll do that. So
I ask you all the time.
But I do preach in the UCC church, just so we know. That was a joke.
I'll go preach over there.
But this whole business of trying to serve God no matter where we are, and to be smart enough to listen to where he wants us to be. And the not the last thing I want to say, but as a pastor, one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned, and it was given to me a long time ago, but I'm too stubborn to listen. You have to cultivate the art and ministry. That's the way he presented it to me. The art and ministry of saying no. You don't do that, you're going to be like James, or the book of James, being tossed as a pastor to and fro. Your heart's going to be compromised. And you're going to find when that happens, then you start to physically compromise, period. And so that's my counsel for all of those folks. And all of those, are you going to send me a hate mail? I'm not going to look at it.
And send it to Pat.
Yeah.
He's the one.
TJ at Encounter Church.
Dot New Hope Boycott. Okay, so you almost got my email right. That's where I got nervous. I was
TV
getting scared.
slash.
Yeah.
Okay. I see why
send people to your
my
house.
daughter loves you. I do. I see why she loves you. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I get nervous. So, so here's the other thing, that just being able to sit and talk with you over this time, it's wild to me. But like, I feel like you have Well, one thing that just stood out to me is it feels like you have a really clear sense of who you are and what you're supposed to do. And regardless of where you go, that's what you do. So whether you're in the church, out of the church, whatever age group, whatever culture, it just doesn't matter. And I'm just curious, like, if you were trying to talk to somebody that was just trying to figure out, like, who am I? Yes, I'm a son or daughter of Christ. All the generics of, like, this is the core, but the unique part in me, like when I look at you, this love for kids that at 75 you carry, this relational desire, this passion for people to meet Christ. I mean, granted, that's stuff that biblically we all, but there's different aspects that God's put in each one of us. So I'm like, how do you figure out that part of just who you are and what you're called to?
I wish, again, I wish I could say to you I figured it out. I don't know if that's what I would say I've done. I'm just trying to, every day, hear what God says and then do that. I know that sounds trite, but for me, that's my way of life. Every morning, I'm asking God, what am I doing today? Yes, I have a schedule. And we come up with a schedule together. And oftentimes, it takes a while for the schedule to become pretty scheduled. And then I'll find out, I thought I had this right down, and then I'll find out going through the week, no, it's not. It's going to change, and it does. All right? I have to be smart enough to not get so wrapped up in the making of the schedule as much as listening to God of what the schedule needs to be. There's a difference. There's a difference. There's a big difference. For me, it is.
Yeah.
So I'm every day looking for, seeing the signs, hearing my wife. Mm-hmm. She has a good sense of what God wants us to do and what she wants me to do. But that's been, for me, I mean, I joke about it a lot, but she is my spiritual mentor in so many ways. And of course, she looks to me as her spiritual mentor. So, we do have the normal things. I don't know if it's normal, but we do read the scriptures together. We pray together. I think that should be normal for anybody who believes in Christ, not pastors only, but for anybody who knows Christ. Those kinds of things are part of our lives. See, those little things that sometimes I think we may overlook a little bit, but those are the things that pretty much hem me in to know who I am and what I'm doing. And at the end of the time, you guys ask me, okay, how did you get there? All I know is I took steps every day, and that's what got me there. I don't know if I planned it that way, but I do know I've dedicated my life to finding out what God wants me to do with my life. And if you, at the end of my life, you can take a look and you can sum it up in all one mega statement. And all I got to tell you is, for me, it's every day listening to God's voice and being obedient to what He calls me to do that day.
It's so wild. We've done a couple of these interviews and talking to different guys and that. Okay. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've actually heard consistently. And I think why that hits so hard is I think that a lot of us, we look and it's like, oh man, one day I'm going to have this figured out, in the sense of like, but I'm like sitting here and like, that day's not going to come. Yeah. It literally is. Yeah. You become completely dependent on His guidance.
Yes.
On a daily space. And that's what I'm hearing
daily.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. Don't get to mean that I don't have huge goals. Like, for instance, in January 1, the big thing that I wanted to do this year, and that's what I've been focused on completely, is what does in Christ mean? Well, didn't you do that before? No. This is the first time I've taken that apart and taken a look at what does in Christ mean. And this is now July, right? So it's been 7 months that I've been doing that. And that's my theme for the whole year. What does in Christ look like? And there's some things that are being revealing to me, because I'm a little slow learner, okay? I'm very slow. So what's being revealed to me nowadays, I mean, I take a look at that and I just shake my head. Why didn't you learn that earlier? It's amazing to me what God is doing and how He's revealing stuff to me. And it's going to be different for everybody. We're not all the same. We can't be all the same. Yeah. But what we do have is we have the same God who desires us to be wherever we need to be for Him. Yeah. You, all of us at a certain time. And that's what's important to me. Today, I knew I was going to be with y'all, and I prayed, like crazy. Okay, let me not screw this up. TJ, my daughter loves TJ. I got to make a good impression on TJ so that, she's going to ask me, brother, she's going to ask me, how was he? And I have to report, he was incredible, hon.
Gotta pay these guys well,
Yep,
man.
that's right. That's right.
Unreal.
I know that I've seen that, I've seen your practice of that. I think some of the most important things that we can do will never be seen, right? The mornings with Jesus, the quiet moments that nobody ever sees. We're not getting high fives for that. But I know with my personal experience with you has been when we when you make time for coffee to spend with me, it's questions like, how's your time with Jesus? And it's questions like, how is your wife doing? And not just that, but how are you serving your wife? How's that happening? Mm-hmm. When I hear you, and I've heard this multiple times, like we do a yearly Bible plan, and we're running through the Bible, the Old Testament once, the New Testament twice. And how many times I've heard you say, it's too much, man. For me, I'm slow. I'm here, man. And you're talking 7 months on understanding in Christ.
Yes.
It's a lived out limit, like what you just said, of learning how to say no, that I think for me, I'm 41 now, whatever generation I may represent or may not represent, whatever that is, the desire to want to just speed it up, feel like we got it, and yet the deepest fruit that is coming out of your life is when you're saying, actually, no, it's when I'm limiting and just focusing on what God is saying no to these things so that I can say yes to the few things that he's asked me to do. And I think I've watched that, and I've been a part of you asking me those same questions.
Well, thank you. Because intentional or not, that's my lifestyle now.
Yeah.
But I will confess that it's been, as of late, I think I learned to do that way more when I started at Oahu, being with adults, because they definitely want, it's not that kids don't, but definitely there was a tremendous need for folks to come to grips with the fact, I'm going to get hate mail, it's not about the color of the carpet. And I needed to make sure that they understood that if they're going to have me as a pastor, that the focus is going to be on how can we build what's on inside of us more than what's on the outside of us. Because that's what God has done in me.
Yeah.
I can't be different than who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm not making that judgment on everybody saying that if you don't do that, then you're out to lunch. And so no. This is how God has wired me in the space and place that I am today.
But I think you draw attention to a natural tension of what is in whether it's more organized or vocational church life or whatever, that we sometimes get our attention on things that aren't important in the eternal timeline. Whether it's carpet, the drapes, the style, whatever it is, when we're not on mission, we don't have that gospel heart. Sometimes our attention gets focused on other things.
Well, and you learn those things when you fail to do those things. See, it didn't come as, wow, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm hitting that. No, it came about in the multiple times that I have failed.
Wait a minute, you made mistakes? I don't. What?
This is my past.
You wait. Hold on, man.
This is my past.
Wait a second.
Okay, guys. For me, it is about growing and learning, because God is not afraid of my mistakes. He supersedes my mistakes. And that's been a saving quality in the last 15, 20 years of my life, that I don't have to be ashamed of them, but I can actually claim them, learn from them, and become actually better, not bitter. That's high for me.
Okay, so if I had to just this has been amazing. Just all the conversation.
For you mean?
Yeah, totally. That's been amazing. That's what we're really here for, is ourselves.
That's right.
Let's be honest.
Okay. Sure.
So, but if you had to just look, and if let's say that you were going to be, go go back 40 years and you had to tell yourself, like, here's one thing that I wish I knew then that I know now. Like, had I got this right 40 years ago, this would have changed everything. And maybe that's not to say it didn't go well, but if you just could go back and there's one thing that I wish that I had a handle on, or I knew then, but I know now, what would you say that is?
That's a tough one. It is. I would say for me, when you're young, you think you can do anything, anytime, any place, anywhere. That's how I thought. I was invincible. Yeah, So if I skip my morning time, I'll get it at noon. I'm not worried about that. And not only that, if I too many things came up at noon, hey, I'm gonna hit it tonight. And here's what I found out: you keep on doing that, you'll never do it. Not never do it, but you won't get to it. And then 2 or 3 days later, you go, oh, dang, I forgot that. And that's where you are. So if I were to change anything 40 years ago, I would have tried to see how I could be more disciplined in keeping that time sacred. That morning time sacred. That's what I would do. Wait, what's the laugh?
That's good, man. It's just like...
Like, that's what it is.
You said 40
Some
years ago.
people get convicted and cry, but Pat and I laugh. So.
And then cry.
Yeah, because you see, back in the day, as a youth pastor, I could do anything. And what I learned is, after that day was done, I didn't do much. If it's not done with the right kind of attitude, pointing people to Christ, then all of that effort was for naught. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's rubbish. Guy Paul said that, I think. Mm-hmm. It's rubbish. And not only do I believe that, but I'm convicted by that. So those who I have discipled and am discipling, I tried to let them know that the focuses of life are just what I've been telling you guys. And I know it's, for a lot of people, it's boring. Wait, just spend time in the morning? Matthew 22, Matthew 20, that's all you do? No, that's not all I do. That's what God does in me. Big difference. I can't do jack. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I apologize. Can't do jack.
Yeah.
What I do is I depend upon Him to stir my heart, to stir my vision, to stir the energy when I'm lost and I don't have any. It's Him. It always has been about Him. I was just too stupid when I was young to do that and depend upon Him. That's all.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Literally, this has been amazing. So,
well, come on, Dan, Chun. Come on, you got Mr. Icon. What you talk? Norman,
I'm just saying, it's crazy to hear the different people and just get a picture for like what God's been doing, and it's just wild to me. I feel like so privileged to get to sit here and ask people. You know,
and what's like so similar, what's different and nuanced in everybody's story, but also what boils down to the similar things, like just that sacred time. Get with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the most amazing thing about that is, and this is what I really love about God even more, is that we will all do that and we will not have the same results. We will not have the same mission. Yeah. We will not be about the same goals, but we will be about the same God.
Amen.
That's what has been exciting to me to see. If you told me this 50 years ago, nah, but now I can see that clearly. And
thank you so much, Kahu, for being here. It's been an honor on that, and really I feel like just what you've shared is going to play a major part in these years to come. So
whatever it can be used to build God's kingdom, fine. Even if the hate mail comes, I'm good.
That's it. Pat at newhopekawaikai.com, people. All right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much again, Kahu Kurt, for being with us on the podcast. I was one of those teenagers that came to know Jesus through the ministry of Young Life, the people that led others to Christ at such a pivotal age. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with someone that would find it beneficial. And don't forget to subscribe however you're listening to us for more upcoming episodes.
Yeah, and if you have any comments, please leave them below. And if you know any more of this story or insights, we would love to be able to learn everything that God's been doing in and through Hawaii. That's it for today. We will see you guys next time.